On this episode of The Breakthrough Show, get ready to meet an attorney with an out-of-this-world personality, Tim Hodgkiss. In our conversation, we dive deep into what it means to simply be yourself. Is it as simple as it sounds? Plus, we'll find out a little about his work and how he's using social media to continue his own personal development in authenticity. Then we'll meet the author of a brand new book, Was That a Red Flag? Dean Anderson. Dean shares openly on today's episode about his journey in recovery from alcoholism and how it ultimately led to the beautiful relationship he has with his wife. Now he's taken some of the lessons he's learned and given an incredible insight in this new book. Don't miss an all-new episode coming up now.
Life gives us moments when we have the opportunity to make a choice, and what we choose has the potential to change our lives forever. Join us now for another inspired episode of The Breakthrough. And now, please welcome the creator and host of the show, Jessica Dugas.
Welcome back to The Breakthrough Show. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I'm super excited to be here with you for another incredible episode today. I want to thank all of you for watching or listening wherever you are in the world. I'm super excited about this episode. Coming up later on in the show, I have a dad, husband, vice president of sales, and now an author. Dean Anderson is here. He is on a sober journey for more than 8 years, and now having a blended family, he's had some amazing insight about relationships that you are not going to want to miss. He's an amazing person, and I can't wait for you to hear his story and his perspective. But coming up first, we are talking to a brand new friend of mine. When I was introduced to him through a mutual friend and saw his Instagram full of Care Bears and unicorns and bright colors and smiley faces, and of course, his uber positive attitude and jokes. He's got jokes, you guys. I would have never guessed in a million years that he was an attorney. And so when I learned that, I thought, well, that'll teach me to judge a book by its cover. So joining us now for not only a segment of Hot Topics, but a little getting to know you as well. Please welcome Tim Hodgkiss to the show. Welcome, Tim.
Woo! Thank you, Jessica.
And are you wearing your smiley face shirt today?
I am. The big smiley is here. Yes. It has arrived. I just felt like it was appropriate thing to do. It's so funny because, and I know we'll get into this more deeply, but I am an attorney, and you think of attorneys as being very just dry, very staid, very stone-faced and cold. And I am so not that. And it's like a wonder, how did I get into this job, this vocation? How did I land there? Yeah. And it really is an over the hill, through the woods type of story with me. And, you know, it's kind of like I'm doing things in reverse. I'm peeling back the layers of what's really me inside. Yeah. And then now that I'm landed as a lawyer, I'm just sharing all this light and energy, and it's an interesting balance.
So my question is, have you always been that way? Have you always been not afraid to be yourself, Tim?
Oh no. Most of my life has been scared, hiding in the shadows, afraid to share, very diminished, fading into the background so much that I don't even exist because I'm trying to fit in. I'm trying to be accepted. I want everybody to like me. And I just watered and diluted myself down. All the good parts of me, I didn't share out of fear. And it's only been very recently, the last probably 3 to 4 years, have I started to unravel my personality. I mean, to let it out and share it and be vulnerable and accept the fact that not everybody's gonna like me and accept me. And very much how you just expressed, your brother as representing kind of this aspiration for you to be more open and just, here I am owning your space. That was me for, like I said, most of my life. I always loved these big, bold, larger than life personalities, celebrities and sports superstars, just in amazement of how they can just perform in public and not care, about judgment and not care about who they are and what they do. It's like take it or leave it. And I was just so in awe of that throughout my life. And I've always aspired just to get to that level of comfort in my own skin.
Yeah.
And now that I'm kind of feeling that way, it's like, it's really surreal. It's really empowering. And I think it just shows up in every way and manner possible. Like this conversation, I'm just so thrilled. My social media, which I wasn't on social media until like 2 years ago. Like I was so afraid. But then I got on there and I just started to flex that muscle, be more open. And it's just kind of, this is what I do now.
Have you gotten any pushback from anyone of saying like, this isn't how you're not supposed to act like that as an attorney?
As an attorney, you know what? I haven't. And if there is, they just haven't expressed it to me.
they're just not telling you is what it is.
Right, exactly. They're afraid to bring that up.
Yeah.
But for me, I've seen it nothing but a positive, because first, I am living authentically. I'm communicating in a voice that's authentically mine. And I don't really promote myself as an attorney. Yeah, my bio and some of the banners of my social media pages say that I'm an attorney, but my posts largely don't talk about that stuff. It talks about positivity. It talks about living your best life, being free, letting what's inside out. Those are the things that really move me. And if somebody connects with that energy and they have a legal need, then we have a conversation. And I know right away, like if they reach out to me, that our energies are on a similar plane. And I've had nothing but incredible conversations with clients that I've originated from social media. It's really mind blowing. And I've had a number of clients say before we even broach the legal topic of the conversation that, Tim, I just got to say that post or that video you put out, like it really impacted me. It just is incredible to see, somebody living their life, and it's the crazy ones that change the world and keep doing you. And it's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
So it's been really incredible and like eyes wide open with me. So
Now I know you said that you haven't always put yourself out there. And do you think that there is something that is within someone somewhere that makes them be that kind of person where they can be their authentic self? Or do you think it takes like some kind of training or personal development in order to get to that space?
I think it could be a combination of things. I think for me, it was a combination of physiology and just the way I started out in life. So just to unpackage that, I was always classified as a very, very like super shy person. He's shy. He's introvert. He's an introvert. You need to be more of an extrovert. Well, I would if I could. It's like it was always within me. Like the avatar in my mind is kind of showing up now. Like this is what I had in my mind. I've always dressed in a provocative manner. I couldn't shut that off. So I was a target for getting bullied in school. I always was kind of fashionable and kind of pushing the boundaries there. But to be able to verbalize, to share that level of openness to people was difficult. That's not to say that I didn't talk. I did. I had a close group of friends. But when it came to public speaking or talking in a group of like 5 or 6 people, I got nervous and that anxiety just kind of shut me down. So I just lived in that space for a really long time. And it was only till like 4 or 5 years ago. To back up, I spent probably 10 years actively pursuing physiological reasons. Why is this going on with me? And so I pursued doctors. I went to doctors, not very good doctors. I've come to find that, our Western medicine of treating symptoms isn't the approach. Functional medicine, treating the root cause of things is much more impactful. So that led me, going through a series of doctors, endocrinologists, different, is my thyroid, because I have this energy about me, but this anxiety is just so profound the social anxiety is so profound. Like walking through a mall, I would just get, flush and just physical sensation of this is uncomfortable. And when you're uncomfortable, you don't really want to do those things, right? So I just persevered, looked doctor, eventually landed on this really cool Russian doctor who's a functional medicine doctor. And he did a full panel on me, like 14, 15 vials of blood. The phlebotomist was like, this is a lot. Are you sure about this?
Don't drive for the next week.
I'm having a little lightheaded here. But it was so eye-opening because it laid out all the things that were going on with me. And one of the main things was my cholesterol was low. It was like around 100 or below, actually, a little bit below 100. And my doctor was like, you need to eat more fat, you need to eat more steaks. And he had me drinking heavy whipping cream straight, like any fat you can get it, because that was impacting all of my hormones, because the hormones cascade from cholesterol, and hormones affect your neurotransmitters, and anxiety comes out of that. So once we unpackaged that, and none of the fats that I was eating and trying to fish oil, it wasn't adjusting it. So I had to go on therapies to improve that. So DHEA, testosterone was part of it too. And slowly I started to feel myself like for the first time in life. And it was like, it was really so profound. And so that was part of it. But because I've lived so much in that introverted world in my head, like my brain's kind of still wired that way. So I still push myself, each day, because I kind of want to I feel that gravity pulling me back into that introverted space from time to time. So I'm constantly just trying to distance myself from it.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of things, physiology, and just you're indoctrinated into this life with a label, and it just keeps getting compounded by, oh, you're shy. I got passed over for National Honor Society. I still remember this. In high school, like National Honor Society was this thing, that, like the top scholastic, and I qualified for it, but I couldn't get the recommendations from the teachers that was needed. I had the grades, but the teachers wouldn't recommend me because I didn't talk, I didn't raise my hand in class, I didn't participate in class in that way. So that's always stuck with me, and so that's where I spent a lot of my life, very quiet and withdrawn.
Yeah, those moments that we have sometimes, we may brush them off when we have them in the moment, but boy, do they stick in ways like we don't realize moving on in our lives. When someone says to you, be yourself, what does that phrase mean to you?
It means just, for me, it means be unapologetic. It means let it loose, let that light out. Because as an introvert, I feel like we have this innate empathy and understanding. People watching and interpreting body language and things, and it's not always about what people say, it's what they don't say, it's how they carry themselves. And so I'm very intuitive that way. And I always tried the people that I did connect with, actually the people that I've connected with more recently in this kind of transition of being more extroverted, I would really pull people aside and I say, are you holding back? Like, you're not living your best purpose. You're not delivering on your purpose. You're not really saying what I know you want to say. Just be direct with me. And so these are the things that I always valued and wanted to do for myself, that I want other people to do for themselves too. So it's interesting to be kind of on both sides of this equation. But for me, being yourself is just being unapologetic, not to be mean-spirited, but be direct, be upfront, and don't diminish your light to stand next to somebody else or in a group. That's not to say, there's decorum and, there's a right time and place, but I feel like we often minimize ourselves or question ourselves when, going into groups or certain social situations, work even. And I think it's important to be an individual. I mean, an individual as part of a group. I still think it's important, because when we diminish who we are as individuals, it kind of sends a signal that, oh, we're not good enough in who we are. We need to somehow adapt to be enough to be part of this group. And there's just something with me that I don't agree with.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's a balancing act to try to when you're in a group or a community of people, to try to figure out how are we going to fit in, and how are we also going to stand out at the same time and allow ourselves to be unique individuals. And I think that even looking at it such a broader perspective at the stuff that's going on around the world right now, I think that a lot of that is the same energy of how do we function as a community, how do we function as a people, and then also do what we feel led to, what feels good for us. I am so excited to dive in a little bit further with you and also get to talk to you a little bit about your work, Tim. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back and chat with Dean, and we're going to have more with Tim at the end of the show. So we'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Brandon, and over the past year, the Delight Cafe team and I have traveled across the U.S. researching this rapidly growing industry of CBD products. What we have found throughout the industry were products that were inconsistent in dosage and used ingredients that weren't even lab tested. Products with chalky textures, bitter aftertaste, and worst of all, confusion among the CBD consumers. That's why we created Delight Cafe. A 15 milligram, lab tested, all natural, water soluble hemp CBD powder pack. It's odorless, colorless, and tasteless. Add it to your favorite drink of choice, wherever, whenever, on the go. Quickly find your calm, your balance, and your delight when you need it most.
Welcome back to the Breakthrough Show. I'm really passionate about featuring people on the show and their stories of the times that we realize that our lives aren't exactly what we want it to be, and we make that decision to change it for the better. So I am really excited to have a dad, a husband, a brother. He grew up in New England like me, and also like me has found his way down south somehow. And so really excited to welcome on the show, Dean Anderson. Welcome, Dean.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So excited to have you here. I'm really excited to talk about your journey today, but you've also become a new author, which I'm really excited to talk about with you as well. But I know you have had quite the journey and are still on a continual journey, which is something we really like to talk about here on the show, is that it's not just about these one-time breakthrough moments and then everything's better from then on. It's a process and we have to continue to work at it. Take us back a little bit to what your life was like, say, maybe 10 years or so ago.
10 years ago, I was in my first marriage. I was still working for the same company. I've been there about 23 years now. But I was caught up in pretty heavy alcoholism at that time. I was being the best dad I could, best employer, best son, about everything I could be. I was doing the best I could. But I started out, as probably a lot of us did, kind of just a fun drinker, it's what we did when we grew up. I mean, you grew up in New England, around that area. It was kind of revolved around that. We seemed to have a pub on every corner rather than a church. So it was kind of crazy where I grew up, and it was normal. It just got the best of me and caught up to me really quickly. And I would think if you're going back 10 years, that was about the worst time. It was, as far as the drinking was concerned, it just really spun out of control. I couldn't figure out, because I'm a person that's rather disciplined and a lot of willpower, if you will, in my life, and every other aspect. But that one category, drinking in particular, I could not conquer it by myself. And the more I tried to, the worse it got, and the more of a spiral I went down into my late 30s. Yeah. So it was a rough time at that point.
So it started out as like a social thing for you. Was there any moment you can think of that really pushed you into over drinking, or realizing that, you know, as you look back, realizing that that's when kind of the problem started?
I know the pivotal point when it really took a dive.
Mm.
I think the drinking had excelled, where once you're drinking every day and sometimes for the wrong reasons, that's a bad sign. But you know it's bad when you wake up one morning, you decide to have a drink that morning because there's some left from the night before. And that's where I went down the spiral, because once you do that, it's no longer a thing you can justify, where work's done, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? And you're going to have a drink at the end of the day and you're going to wind down. It's not that, it's a whole different animal. And by that point, you're drinking just to survive, and you're drinking just to not feel sick. And yet the further you go into it, the sicker you get, and the harder it is to stop. Because if you do stop, in my case anyway, you're going to get sick. You're going to get the DTs. You're going to take a week where you're in a dangerous spot health-wise, where you can't come out of that drinking spell. And it changes the whole course of action, where you're no longer, let's call it a hard drinker. Now you're a full-blown alcoholic.
Mm. Do you look back and see it as very much of a solo thing, or were the people that you were surrounded with drinking as much as you? Was it absolutely tied to a social issue?
I mean, part of me thinks it's genetic, and I think as good alcoholics, this is what we do. We tried geographic changes. I tried that. We tried, escaping people or whatever. We figure out that it's us. And if you follow the course of an alcoholic, they will find people who drink as heavy as they do.
Mm-hmm.
And once they're drinking more than that group, they're going to go find a new group. So by the time you're done drinking, you're with a crowd that usually does keep up with you pretty well. And maybe they go home and they sleep it off. But if you're a true alcoholic, you're doing around the clock at that point. And it's all about you. Nobody had an influence. It was you that took it that direction, and you made a lot of choices to make sure that you justified or felt comfortable within your drinking within that crowd.
Right.
So it's all self-imposed. Besides the genetic part of it, I mean, if you're genetic, you may catch up with you anyway. But once you're in it, it's all about you to stop it or find help.
Right. It has to make it more difficult, though, to get to that point where you want to stop, because if you reach the point where you're now surrounded by everyone who's living that same kind of lifestyle as you, it's kind of like maybe not even realizing that there is an issue because the people around you look similar, right?
Correct. I think, at least for me, I can speak from my own experience only, but I think for me, even when I get to the point where I was hanging out with the heaviest of drinkers, I was still drinking more, and they were warning me about my drinking. And when you see that, where else do you go? You don't have many choices left, and that's where my drinking took me. And it was a scary place to be, because at that point you're completely out of control, and you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, but yet there's so few choices that you want to take, because a lot of them mean that you can't have a drink for the rest of your life. And that's terrifying. But yet at the same time, if you keep drinking, there's really only three places it's going to end up. You're going to be in prison, or you're going to be dead, or you might be in an insane asylum if you don't. Right. And that's where I was headed. I didn't want any of those three alternatives.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about what was happening to your close relationships.
I just think I wasn't present. I think that what I originally was, let's say before I started drinking at the age of 14 or what have you, I think that part of me, that part of my soul was missing. It turned into something new. And I was trying the best I could to be what I wanted to be, a dad and a husband and all of that, and a good employee. But what was left of me from that age of 15 had just escaped me. And I wanted so bad to get back to what I was, the person that was inside me, maybe what God created. I wanted to become back to what I was, and I couldn't get there. And I think even though I convinced myself that the relationships around me were not that bad, they just were not good. And I was absent, even though I was present, if that makes sense. I was there, but I was never really there. And that hurts me to this day, but it was just my journey. And I think that, thank God I did get help. And for the people that were willing to stick by me, and thank God they did, they got to see the old me come back. Some of them who even didn't know who the old me was, like my kids, I was always a loving father, but I was able to become much more present in their lives and be there for them to assist them, not just be the guy on the couch, possibly with a beer in his hand.
So at some point, you realized that you needed to be done, and you're going to rehab and everything else, and you quit drinking, and it's happily ever after that, right? Like immediately.
No, but I think my story does have probably less trudging, if you will, or at least the hard parts. I think that I had a really crazy first year, but I went into rehab because I was knocking on death's door. And luckily, two good friends of mine had gone to our CEO at our company and said he needs help. And I'd been with the company long enough where our CEO was a great guy and had helped me and wanted me to get help and come back doing well and being healthy and all that. So I had gone to rehab, and like a good alcoholic, I got out. In about 5 months, I stayed sober. And the way an alcoholic brain thinks is that you sort of minimize the damage that you've done. And within December of that year, I had convinced myself to drink just enough to not go back to rehab again. That was my actual thought process. And I went on one last bender, and then it was done. At that point, I didn't go back to rehab or anything, but I went into a program to get sober. And that was February 7th, 2013. And I've been sober ever since.
That's amazing. Congratulations on that. It takes work.
I'm still sitting here. I mean, if you knew how I drank, that's the biggest miracle of it, I think, is that somehow I'm still here and I really don't have any health problems to speak of because I had plenty going into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know one of the things that you have done in creating this new life for yourself sober, and one of the things that you love, and I love how passionate you are is talking about it, is your relationship with your wife.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I met my wife in recovery, oddly enough. She's been sober, will be 10 years this September. And that's how we met. We were just friends for a couple of years, which I kind of suggest to people. That's not a bad avenue to go because you really get to know each other. And sometimes you know each other's secrets because you don't think you're going to get in a relationship later, right? So honesty, if it starts out with honesty, it's always a good thing. But yeah, we had met, I guess it was 2011 or so. And then we knew each other for a couple of years. She saw me go through about 10 different relapses. I don't even think that's an exaggeration, as friends. And then we started hanging out a lot when I first really decided to hang it up and quit drinking and get help. And, you know, we're so naive sometimes, like it almost had to be told to us that we were dating because we didn't know. We just hung out together all the time. And it just sort of evolved like that. And I think that's a good thing. There's so many things to her that helped me at that point in time in my life, mostly because she already had some recovery. But she also grew up with some people from Boston. So the accent was not foreign to her. And my attitude and sarcasm was like king. And she is too. Like she's kind of an enigma when it comes to tech, because she's born and raised in Kerrville. She was a perfect complement, is the best way of putting it, to what I needed and to what I honestly probably always what I was searching for. I just didn't know it.
Well, speaking of your relationship and your amazing wife, that all of that led to this book that you have come out with called "Was That a Red Flag?" Tell us a little bit about how that was birthed.
In a strange way, I have no intention of ever writing a book, and this is a pretty short self-help book. It's almost in a workbook format where each chapter you read it, and it has a list of questions at the end of each chapter that sort of make you apply it to your own relationship. But it started because people had come to us in different forms and fashions. Some people that we were friends with that were a couple, or some people that were just friends with us on Facebook or some other social media platform. And they kept asking what makes us work, or they would say, we want what you have. And we weren't thinking anything of that. I mean, we kind of think we're both two crazy people that fit well together. We really weren't putting much thought into it. But because it happened so often, a family friend of ours and said, why don't you write a book? And I thought, you know what, I'll write it anyway. I don't care if somebody doesn't read it. I'm not in for the money or a dollar. It has nothing to do with that. It was the process of trying to write a book because I'd like to write more later. But also my thought process was if 1, 2, 3 people get a hold of this book and and it helps them, whether it makes them fix their relationship or helps them get out of one, I don't know. It's worth it all. And that's why we did it. So it's kind of crazy. I did not fancy ourselves writers. Maybe we're not. But the point is that it was asked enough of us to the point where we had one couple come to us and they actually ended their relationship because they came to our wedding and said they didn't have what
Oh
we
my
had.
gosh.
I know that was a bit impactful for us because we're like, no, we don't want anything to do with that choice,
Yeah.
you know? And they were just, no, it's good. They were like, it's good that we see it now. So that made me feel like, I don't know, maybe we should put it down on paper, see what it looks like. And if it helps somebody, you know, all the better.
Yeah. So what's the premise of Was That a Red Flag? What are we going to find in this book?
I think it's got 12 chapters. They run from anything from having common passions or things that you do on a daily basis, even down to the sexual. It's got in there for people, and not to get too inappropriate. It's got how you communicate together. Like I said, mutual interest rather. I do touch a little bit on the influence of religion and politics in it too. Mm-hmm. I don't really like touching that chapter, but because I think it does have an impact on people's relationships, that, you know, it's kind of important to look at it when you go into a relationship, because a lot of things, most of the red flags I talk about are not the ones that are red flags that you think of, like extreme jealousy or somebody who's really controlling. It has nothing to do with that. It's more to do with minor things that we look at that we think, oh, that's, you know, a bit of a red flag, but I bet we can overcome that. Right. Or it's more like, I can change that in that person, or not even looking at the fact that maybe it's me who needs to change and become more tolerant of others. So it's more smaller things like there's one chapter on, you know, do you have date nights or is it a date life? Because it drives me crazy that all those people, like, I know people with kids don't have much time, but they're always going on some date night and they have a restaurant and they go to a dinner and a movie. But like, you can turn every day somewhat into a date night. And I think that's important. And I think part of the sexual one is not just about sex. It's more about physical contact. It's more about, to me, the idea that throughout the course of a day, and I'm not talking about like public displays of affection, but like laying a hand on your wife's knee or putting your arm around her, hug her, whatever it is, all those things that lead up throughout the day are a physical contact that keep us connected. And I think this might be the first time I've had that, but I've just noticed it's very impactful to our relationship. And all the chapters are like that. I think on top of that, things about getting away together and taking trips together. But I also even have a chapter that talks about it's okay to be alone for a day. You know, you don't need to morph into each other and become, you know, there's growth as a couple, and there's also growth individually. You know what I mean? It's a lot of cool stuff in there. And it was literally, I don't know, I wrote it during the pandemic and it just kind of flowed out of me. So I have no idea how it'll be received. I hope it helps, but it wasn't why I did it. And I hope it helps somebody. That's the main thing. And I think, I don't want anybody thinking that the book's going to be like about those big things like jealousy or what have you. I think those are huge factors that if you don't see that red flag, then you're just maybe being blind to it or maybe naive to it. But these are more ones that are the tiny ones that could turn out to be a bigger red flag later. And I just want to see people put more thought into it before they get into a relationship rather than diving into it and then have to go through a divorce later, you know?
I love that. And let me just say that it's so nice and refreshing to have these conversations where people like us can look back and then bring it forward to the present and say, man, we've come a long way. And I'm so happy for us that we're in these relationships now after everything that we've been through, and just to have that is just, it's priceless, right? It's so good.
Yeah, and you and I have similarities as far as our past go, and there's a chapter on blended families too. So, and because that's a weird one. When I never really done that, and it goes into real detail about how to, as parents and being a couple, how to conquer that. Because there was some definite learning curves. Because my wife and I have been together now for 7 years, married 5. And I think we've had 3 arguments the whole time we've been together. And all 3 were about our kids because we raised them different, you know, and that's cool. But you can't, you know, you just kind of have to come to some compromises. And if you can achieve getting your kids to trust that step parent, let the rest go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen the movie Blended with Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore?
No, I'm
Oh my
surprised I haven't
gosh.
too, actually.
You must watch that because I just watched it again the other day I saw it when it first came out and then hadn't watched it in a long time, but it really speaks to that. You know, these two families were so completely different, but they come together, and it's like you start to see as the movies go on how it's like that puzzle piece, like you said,
Right.
of it's one little thing just fits in there, and that's how that's going to work. And another piece fits over here, and that's how that's going to work. And it's such a beautiful thing to see that happen.
Right. And I think you've probably experienced it too during the pandemic. It's nuts. And both me and Cindy, my wife, we both work out of the house. You know, we're kind of at opposite ends of the house while we're working or whatever. We eat lunch together, whatever. And we joke that we see each other, besides when we're sleeping, like 16 hours a day. And I never get sick of that woman. I'm not saying that because I'm on a podcast. Like, I really don't. I'm sure she gets sick of me because I never stop talking. I never shut up. But that was another part of the puzzle piece, is that she'd rather just listen. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I made sure I asked her that, because how could you get a word in edgewise? We'd be talking anyway. But but I don't know. It's a good match.
Yes, oh my gosh, so good. I just thank you so much for being on with me today and sharing your story, being vulnerable. It's not easy to continually tell it and relive it and all of that. And I just thank you so much for that. All of the information about Dean and his books will be in the show notes, so you guys will be able to just click it and be taken right there, so you can purchase your copy of Was That a Red Flag? And I know you're working on another book as well. Is that correct?
That is correct. This year I am writing a new book because there was a lot of questions about sobriety, good questions, how we got here and how it happened. And the new, as far as I know, unless that changes, the title of the new book will be called Finding Myself Sober, kind of a double meaning, if you will.
I love it. I love it. It's going to
be
I'm
looking forward to it. And I have no idea what that's going to involve yet. But I'm really looking forward to it. This one's really diving in more into some personal things and spiritual growth that both myself and my wife has gone through. This is going to be more about probably my journey than hers. But she's been such a huge part of that journey, and she's one of the most enthusiastic people in recovery I've ever met. And she just truly lives it and breathes it and walks the walk, talks the talk, all of it. So she will probably be a big influence on that book. And I can't wait to start writing it, because it's really going to make me reflect on these last 8 years come February 7th.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to have you back on the show when that book comes out to talk about that. And we would love to talk to Cindy too, because now we love Cindy like you love Cindy, and it's great.
Yeah, if I get, well, like I said, I talk too much, so I'll get on here. I'll just, I'll take the spotlight. She likes sitting back in the distance, but she's writing a book too, so it should be interesting. I don't know if she'll finish it this year or what she's going to do. But I'm looking forward to doing that. And if you end up doing more of a podcast on relationships of sorts, I could drag her into that one. Yes. I think she'd agree to it.
Yes, that would be amazing.
So
Dean,
let me know.
I will. It's been fantastic having you here. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for letting everybody know about this fantastic book, which I think is going to help a lot of people, whether you're in a relationship or not, to give you some good pointers on opening your eyes a little bit to relationships. So thank you so much, Dean, for sharing with us today.
I appreciate being here, and I hope somebody reads it and gets something out of it. And I just hope they start getting looking for and getting what they deserve, and just kind of living an abundant life. That's all I really want for anybody, to be happy out there.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks so much, Dean. We're going to be back in just a minute for more of The Breakthrough Show. Breakthroughs are about more than you might think. They're about discovering who you are, digging deep, reaching to the core of your soul. They're about healing. Healing yourself, understanding your beliefs, creating a ripple effect. And it's not just those initial moments that matter. It's about using them to bring more joy into our own lives and the lives of others. It's about having fun, letting loose, enjoying every moment life has to offer. It's about finding a safe space. It's about creating connection. Join us each and every month for exclusive programming, where we invite you to go beyond the breakthrough. So we ask you, are you ready? We'll see you online at thebreakthroughshow.com. Welcome back to the Breakthrough Show. I want to give a big thank you to my special guest today, Dean Anderson, and also to my other special guest today, Tim Hodgkiss, who we're back with today, diving down the little rabbit hole. I love finding people that I can just talk about all the things with, Tim, and we're lucky that we're on a time constraint. That's all.
I love it.
But I'm so happy you're here today. And I would love to ask you, because I know you have your attorney part of your life, and that you have the social media that you do. Now, the social media, the positivity, the motivating, the sharing about your life, all of that isn't directly related to you being an attorney. What are your goals with your social media? Like, is it just a passion thing for you, or do you have things you're looking at, places you're looking at going with it?
I just want to see how far I can take it. Honestly, I have so much fun creating. That's the thing about me. I have this duality. I have a very creative mind. I have a very analytical mind. They come together in what I do as being an intellectual property attorney. But I love the ridiculous. I love, I have a very juvenile sense of humor, and I haven't really had the opportunity to share it. And so there's this repressed humor that I have, and I'm just going with it. I have a lot of fun. It centers me. It kind of recharges my batteries after having a stressful day, working as a lawyer. And I don't know. I never thought I'd be talking to you, Jessica, ever, never, ever. So I'm just going to take it as far as I can. I really derive so much joy. I'm vlogging right now. So I have a YouTube channel called the Identity Crisis Project that I have almost daily vlogs of me in my life. And I've always loved reality TV. Loved it so much. I think just because people were there, they're being open, they're honest, transparent, and it's so powerful. And so that's where my energy and heart's at. And we're just going to let it play. I really do.
Do you know that have you watched the show on Netflix, The Circle?
I started to watch it the other day. Yeah.
Train wreck. Anyway, I think you'd be fantastic on that show.
You never know. That's what I mean. There are no limits. Sky's the limit, and onward and upward, we're always going. And that's how I live.
Tell us a little bit about your work as an attorney, Tim. What kind of attorney are you? Is this like Law and Order? What are we doing here?
It's not quite Law and Order, but it's the creative part of law. That's how I like to couch it. I am an intellectual property attorney, and that encompasses patents, which are the protection of inventions. Like the new iPad and the new iPhone. There's a number of patents that protect the technology inside of those devices. And then trademarks, which are all about, brand awareness, brand recognition, and protecting that. And then copyrights, which protect audiovisual works like movies, protects music, literary works like books. And then trade secrets, things that derive value from them not being generally known and out in the public. Like I think the Coca-Cola formula is one of the great examples of that. So I deal in this creative area of the law where people are, dreaming up things, and they want to make them uniquely theirs that nobody else can copy. So I help clients protect those things.
That sounds
it's really fun.
It sounds like a fun part of law to be in. At least you're not getting into like I don't know if it would, do you feel like if you were in a different type of law, if you would be any different on social or anything like that? Do you think that that matters?
I don't think I could do any other type of law. I don't think I could practice any other type of law. I kind of fell into this just by pursuing more education. My bachelor's degree is in electrical engineering, and I knew after going through that, I didn't want to get a job, but I didn't want to get my master's degree in engineering. I just didn't like all the overly, it's just way too overly detailed and all the testing and the analytical stuff. I wanted to see how the thing worked. Like I wanted to like market products and that sort of thing, because that's my creative side coming out. So I pursued my master's of business degree. So I got my MBA, and I love that because it was marketing centric. And through that, though, I learned about intellectual property law and patent law specifically. And patent law is largely describing inventions. And I was always a really good writer. And I'm like, I think I can be really good at that. So I went to law school specifically to be, an intellectual property attorney. And that's what I did. And because I was still very much in that introverted space, going through law school was complete and utter hell, because it's all based on the Socratic. Yeah, it's all the Socratic method. So the professor's like, you're up next. We're going to talk to you for the next 40 minutes about these 5 cases that you're supposed to read the night before. And I was just petrified every single day. It was like the worst, like beyond the worst. I still don't know how I made it through, because I was just so full of anxiety every single day. I remember throwing myself on the floor one Thanksgiving holiday at my parents' house and just say, I'm done. Like, there's no way I can do this.
Wow.
And my dad was like, well, you could just quit. And I got up. I'm like, I am not quitting. What are you talking about? I've never quit anything in my life. So I made it through. And but coming into work and typing these patent applications up as an attorney was easy for me in that introverted way. I just came in, did my work and left, but it wasn't really fulfilling. And I knew the construct in my head, I knew there was so much more potential inside, so much more energy that I wasn't letting out. And so that eventually got boring. And I started to, I needed to do something else in terms of the way I lived my life. And that turned into seeing Forbes Riley at a 10X GrowthCon event in Vegas, and unraveled. And now I'm working at a different law firm, sharing my energy, and more successful than I have ever been. So
that's so exciting. And you can see that it's nice to see that payoff of you put yourself out there, you're making these changes in your life, and you can see it paying off in your work and the connections you're making and everything else. I love that process. That part of, personal development can be crying in a corner somewhere sometimes. But I like to see that seeing it all come together and seeing how it's paying off in our lives, because it is work to work on ourselves, to make ourselves better humans. But when we choose to do it, gosh, it's just so nice to see that payoff. Let me ask you a question, because we have a lot of people that watch the show that are becoming new authors, and they're, starting a new podcast. They're wanting to do a talk show. They're just putting themselves out there. At what point do people need to come see you, Tim?
Well, the earlier the better, but once you see this more as a business rather than a hobby, I think it's important to have that conversation with an attorney, specifically about a trademark up front for the things that you've identified, a podcast, any sort of YouTube or Facebook Live program that's reoccurring, that you're thinking down the line that you're going to, start monetizing. You're going to start getting endorsements or advertisers, what have you. You want to protect the brand so nobody else can just start up shop and call themselves something, either exactly the same name or something that's confusingly similar, and cause problems for you out there in the marketplace. So I think trademarks are critically important in those areas that you've just mentioned. And earlier the better, especially if you view this as a business rather than a hobby.
Right. It's good to know. Is it a long process? Are we going to have to, or is it going to be this grueling thing?
I try to make it as painless as possible. That's one of my goals. But the entirety of a trademark registration process can take around 12 months. But the process itself and starting the application and filing it, the upfront process, that's relatively painless and quick. We're talking a day or two, and we can have the application on file, and that protects you against somebody else filing ahead of you and getting that priority in line and preventing you from being able to register your mark. And it can get more complex and detailed depending on who used the mark, when, who was first in line, who was first in priority. But in general, the faster you are to file, the better off you are, and the less costly it's going to be in the long run should any sort of dispute arise.
Yeah. All of that information just went like this. And that's why we have you, Tim. All of it. That's why we need, I'm sure it's a lot to remember. Like, that's why I am not, funny joke. I don't think I ever told you this, but when I was in middle school and I made student of the month, they used to do like a little snippet in the newspaper, and they would interview you. And they said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up, Jessica? Are you ready for this? I said I wanted to be a singer or a lawyer.
Those are really diverse occupations.
What?
Really diverse.
I don't know. And of course, now I'm like, why didn't you become the singing lawyer and become social media famous? Because we didn't have social media back then.
Right.
That's why.
That's it. That's the TikTok sensation that's going to sweep the world.
Man, I'm so disappointed in myself at this point.
Well, you got the microphone, you're in the studio.
I
feel like you're doing what you're doing.
It could have happened. but this is, it's really interesting though, because even though I am not now what I thought I was going to be then, I can see little bits of little me in there, like that it's the same energy, it's the same feeling, just looks different. And I couldn't imagine doing anything else, because I get to have conversations with people like you, and what's better than that, Tim?
Well, thank you. You made my day.
Well, thank you so much for being on here today, Tim. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
People can connect with me through Facebook, Tim_Hodgkiss, HODGKISS, and that's Facebook and Instagram. And you can email me at thodgkiss, THODGKISS at BDB, boy dog boy law, BDBlaw.com. And that's my firm's email address.
Awesome. Well, we will have all of your information in the show notes as well, so people can just click and go. And that's what we like, to the ease of that now. Tim, thank you so much for being with me today and for sharing a little bit of your story and your journey. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Jessica. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, it has been another incredible episode today. I want to thank my very special guest, Dean Anderson, and also Tim Hodgkiss. I hope you all have enjoyed this show. And remember, you can always visit thebreakthroughshow.com to connect with every single guest that has ever been on this show. Watch all the past episodes. And don't forget as well to join our Patreon community. We get together every Saturday morning on Zoom for some amazing conversations, going down the rabbit hole like we did a little bit on the show today. So much fun to do that with other people. Thank you so much for watching or listening wherever you are in the world. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas. And until next week, I invite you to make every day a great day for a breakthrough. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Breakthrough. Please visit our website at www.thebreakthroughshow.com and be sure to join our After the Breakthrough community powered by Patreon. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time,